Good evening and welcome to the November 26, 2019 Truckee Town Council meeting. Judy, may we have, or Sarah, may we have the roll call?
Councilmember Klostad?
Here.
Mayor Tierman?
Here.
And Councilmember Abrams?
Here.
Councilmember Commendatory and Vice Mayor Pallaby are noted as absent this evening.
And at this point in time, if you would all please rise and join me in the council in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So at this point of the agenda, we always have an opportunity for public comment for anything that is not on the agenda tonight. So if anyone has public comment for anything that is not agendized, now is your opportunity. Seeing no public comment, we will close public comment, and I will also say thank you to the members of the public who did venture out tonight to be here. Appreciate that. Moving on, we have no presentations this evening, and we do have a couple of items on our consent calendar. Item 6.1. The minutes of the October 22nd, 2019 closed and regular session. And item 6.2, the affordable housing in lieu fee update. Any member of council care to pull an item for staff? No? Any member of the public care to have an item pulled for discussion? Seeing none, we'll bring this back to council for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, consent calendar carries. We are moving with record speed to our first agenda item this evening, item 7.1, which is an overview of the public art advisory body formation process, which our own town manager, Jeff Lux, will be giving.
Yes, thank you. I will do my best to fill in for Hillary. She, because of family travel needs, needed to go early, and so I will do my best. She put a great presentation together and also a great staff report. Thanks to council for being here tonight. The first two items, or the second two items, 7.2 and 7.3, we absolutely needed to do, and so that's why we did have to have a meeting, even though we tried to avoid it. So this one is the public art advisory body formation process. And just to remind us where we've been, public art and having a more consistent and comprehensive public arts master plan and program has been on the radar screen in the 2025 general plan for some time. It seems to be being carried forward in the 2040 general plan update, although it's still in rough draft form, of course. And there's just been tremendous community interest in it for many years. Began a process with a community workshop in June, some council direction on some key issues to be able to complete a draft master plan. That draft master plan was completed in spring of 2019. There was an open house on the draft plan. A lot of people came and had input, good back and forth. And finally, Town Council adopted the Public Art Master Plan in July of 2019. And Goal 4.1, one of the key goals, and I think one of the things from the very beginning that was important to all, was to establish some sort of advisory body, commission, committee, advisory group, left unspecified. Tonight is the night to begin specifying. The guiding principles of this advisory group: empowering a community committee to take a lead role in implementing the public art program, and we wanted to make sure, though, that it was something that was relatively manageable and did not require too many resources to run, but did the job of really getting a community voice that was consistent on public art. As your staff report suggests, this is the recommended committee makeup. You can certainly change this tonight. We're not at this point suggesting particular names. We haven't gone out and solicited names, but these are sort of the categories. One arts advocate, one youth arts representative, a public art expert, performing arts, visual arts, technical expert, and a lay member. There have been some suggestions that perhaps a council member should join this group. I'll leave that up to you to make that decision. We typically have 5-member bodies or 7-member bodies, and in this case, it's a 7-member body that has both public art technical expertise, but also broad community perspective. There's a matrix in the back of your staff report that Hillary put together. I think it's really great, and it really outlines the kind of the roles that everyone should and would play under this structure. And this just gives kind of some of the highlights of that matrix. So the town council's role would be approving the committee, the structure and appointments tonight, and then actual appointments in the near future, approving an annual work plan and a budget, and then occasionally the council would be asked particular questions if it's a major project in a town right-of-way or something. The council would weigh in. The planning commission would get involved if art were proposed as part of private development that came before them. The town staff would be the coordinator of all of these different roles, and would take kind of a technical advisory role and also kind of manage the committee process. The committee then, which is what we're talking about tonight, is really would become the hub of the wheel and the key. They develop their annual work plan. They would create basic policies and programs that go beyond where the master plan went. The master plan is kind of a framework plan and needs some more meat to the bones. They would be developing that. They'd be maintaining the inventory of public art, developing different opportunity sites, and helping us, when an opportunity came up, make decisions on what could go there and what makes a lot of sense, and an advisory role on kind of all things public art. We've left open, excuse me, I apologize. We've left open both the name and the kind of the exact structure of the committee, commission, group. And really, we looked through our codes, and we couldn't find definitions for committee versus commission versus advisory, this or that. It's clearly advisory to council. That's without question. One argument for not having a commission is that there already is a Truckee Public Arts Commission that reports to the Rec and Park District. And so it could get confusing having two commissions that both say public art in them. On the other hand, the one advantage of a commission is it tends to be thought of anyway in the vernacular as a little more permanent, a little more of a fixture, a little more perhaps authority. The reality is it doesn't have any more authority than an advisory committee. It's really the authority that the council grants it that would dictate. So be thinking about a name. We don't have to necessarily come up with one tonight, but it'd probably be helpful. That's the one that we thought might work, but we'll see. So the recommendation is really to provide us direction regarding the roles, the makeup of the commission, the committee, or the advisory group, a name if you so choose, and we'll maybe go back to that to be the kind of talking piece in terms of what you have before you. And if you decide tonight you want to move forward with this, we will then go and solicit some names, and we'll come back to you with a little bit more structure and some actual individuals. We have lots of people who I think have interest in this from the arts community. And by the way, I failed to thank Hillary for all this work, but also Nick, who put all the work in the Public Art Master Plan. And even more importantly, the various artists, art community members, Truckee Arts Alliance, all the different people who came to the many workshops, kept pushing this idea over the years and really made it happen. So much appreciation to all the individuals who got us to this place. And with that, questions?
Thank you, Jeff. Any clarifying questions from council? I just had a few then. Has there been any thought given to the frequency of meetings that this committee might or commission might have?
I knew you were going to ask me questions I couldn't answer.
Okay.
I'm going to say much thought has been given, but I actually don't know the answer to the question.
Okay.
I apologize.
All right. And then the only other question I had.
Probably, I'm going to guess once every 2 months, but I'm not. But that's completely off a guess.
I suppose that could be sorted out as once the committee or commission forms. And then maybe this is a question as well for Hillary when she gets back, or some of the members of the art community here tonight. Any discussion, coordination with the Truckee Public Arts Commission, which is, you mentioned it's the Parks and Rec Commission.
There has been
discussion throughout the process, and I know many of those individuals were a part of the public master plan process, and I think you're looking, shaking your head for that. I don't know if Hillary's had any recent communication with them in terms of making sure the roles are clear and separated.
Okay.
That certainly would have to happen.
Yep. Okay. All right. So what we'll do next, we're going to open this item up for public comment. We'll take public comment, and then we'll bring it back to the council for discussion.
Deliberation. So at this point in time, if there is any public comment, please step forward to the podium.
And we did receive a letter from Mr. Corliss, who's stepping up, and also from TDMA, I believe.
All right. Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind stating your name, and you'll have a 3-minute period of time.
Good evening, Council. Troy Corliss, full-time Truckee resident and artist. I've had a chance to take a look through the staff report and gets my stamp of approval. I think the thing that really stands out for me that ought to be emphasized is the statement on one of the early slides, which says to empower the committee or commission to take a lead role in developing the public art master plan. I think that's really what I'd like to emphasize at this point. I can speak a little bit to some of the merging of TPAC, which is a Park and Recs group. I was on that when it was founded for about 5 years. I no longer am, but just speaking with the chair folks, I know that there's going to be a little bit of reforming and some fusing of the two groups. And it's also worth pointing out that when that group was formed, the name Truckee Public Art Commission was, it was really designed as sort of a jump start to get some momentum for this process. So the idea is that it would eventually morph into something else that the town would take over. So I think that's a very fluid situation at this point.
Thank you, Troy.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Stontiner. My family owns Mountain Forge, and I'm also a member of the TAA, or Truckee Arts Alliance Advisory Council. And we are really grateful that this is going in this direction, that, you know, we're finally getting to the implementation stages of, now that we've been approved since July, and, you know, it seems to be moving pretty quickly, and that's really, really exciting. So thanks to everybody, staff, town council, everybody who's, you know, pushing forward and moving this along. So we really appreciate that. Yes, there's talk about TPAC and TAA merging, and hopefully acting as some kind of advisory role to helping you all select the committee members, whether we have a committee or whether we have a representative on that committee, council, commission, would be great, you know, but we'd also like to just offer the opportunity at advisory for when you need to choose the persons that are going to fill those seats, because I imagine there'll be quite a few people, if it's going to be some type of application process or how those people would be selected. So that was something that we wanted to kind of bring out as an organization, that we can, you know, help in that if you need that sort of help. And the other thing was, we also felt like that Hillary did a really great job of kind of pulling this together and working out the role that that committee will play in the, you know, onset. Troy also in his letter did a really nice job of pointing out that it's a 1 to 5 year implementation program. So the frequency of meetings and things that you were asking earlier, you know, in the beginning, maybe it's quite frequently, because there's some real deadlines, you know, coming up, like March 2020 and so on and so forth. So it might be a pretty, you know, intensive first year, second year, whatever that may be. And that might be worth, you know, kind of just throwing out there. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is there any additional public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment and then bring this back to the council for discussion and deliberation. So it looks like we've got several things to consider. Number one would be committee makeup. And you've got the slide here in front of us to see. Can the public, oh, there it is, yeah. All right, good. I know we had some trouble with slides, I think at the last meeting, so good that we've got that sorted. So that's one item, and then I think second question would be the name, whether committee, commission, or something else. So are there any other items to consider at this point?
I think the obvious, the threshold decision to move forward with it. It sounds like that where you're headed. But
yep.
And then if there's any additional direction on role or timing or anything else you want to just help Hillary and I with in terms of sort of structuring things as we go forward.
Okay. Well, let's take the first one. Should we move forward with this?
Absolutely.
All right. I think we have 3 affirmatives up here, unanimous, and I suspect if our other members were here, they'd be in agreement as well. Second, discussion about the composition of the committee or the commission or other. Who would like to start with that? How are you feeling about what is in front of us here? The one community suggestion was to maybe add the council member as the liaison. It gives you all one more committee you get to be on. Right. There's great advantage in terms of continuity and all of that, but we can also do that with progress reports, X number of times as well. Right. So who'd like to start?
I think the way it's recommended makes sense to me. I appreciate your input, Troy, with agreeing with that along with adding a council member. I think that it's probably going to be sufficient because it sounds like council will be involved at a certain level to provide feedback and give some oversight. And so I don't know that I feel like we need to have a council member involved in the group, whatever that name might be. But this, as long as it's enough, I don't know, is it enough people? Should we add more? I feel like with the visual arts representative, there's so many different types of visual arts that would be my inclination, but I'm less knowledgeable than members of the art community who have provided input, so I'm going to be inclined to kind of take their input.
I think this is, first of all, I want to just thank all the people that took the time and energy to move this forward. I know it was a really long process and a lot of people were involved, and it took commitment and dedication, so I'll just preface it with that. I love the responsibility matrix. I just think that's just beautifully done. And I think that the commission or the committee, whatever it ends up being, should have the full opportunity to influence that. I think we have great representation here. I think I'm concerned on both ends that many hands make light work, and this entity has a lot of work to do. I was reading through this and thinking, my gosh, that's a significant workload and lift. But at the same time, creating large committees and commissions can also be cumbersome and difficult to move effectively with. So I would like to make the recommendation that we move forward with this as our broad expectation. We would at least have representation from each of these 7 categories. Let's receive the applications in the process that I'm assuming we're going to go forward with as we have in other committee developments, and evaluate at that point whether or not we need multiple public art experts or visual art representation, or if just one from each category is enough. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I think that this, the composition, the makeup as presented here is appropriate. It's definitely heavy with individuals who have the expertise in art, in various forms of art, and I think that's appropriate. I think having a lay member also makes sense. I noticed, I think, in the staff report that I think based on community input or input with the art community here in Truckee, it looked like the numbers were between 5 and 9, maybe a little more than that, and so the 7 is sort of a midpoint, larger than most of our commissions or committees or councils in the town. But I think this is probably a good place to start, and this, certainly can always be adjusted once moving down the road. So yeah, I think good to go forward with this. Do we any opinions on the name, committee, commission? Any thoughts on that?
It doesn't matter to me as long as they get to do what we've laid out in our responsibility matrix to do. I think the only, just a little plug there, huh, Jeff?
That was
Oh, okay.
that was subtle.
No, it to me, this is, they should self-identify. The only thing I would add is that I feel it would be important to add some sort of timeline to this, some sort of, at least setting a hope or an expectation that we have this next milestone by X date and then following milestone by X+1 or whatever. I do really want to make sure that this doesn't just get put on the sideline.
Great.
Completely agree. Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't have a really, really clear picture of how, so we have the Public Art Commission currently that reports to the Rec and Park. So is that group going to stay in perpetuity, and how are they going to work, or will they end up combining? Like, we probably wouldn't want one individual to be a member of both groups, or what does that look like?
I think Troy probably has as good of information certainly as I do. I mean, it sounds like there could be some conversations about either combining or making sure the roles are clearly separate if they're going to go on together, but that hasn't been decided yet.
Okay. So I agree that having a clear timeline for moving forward is important.
Yep, I agree as well. Just a few thoughts about the name, and I do agree that maybe once the committee or commission, the group is formed, they can ultimately decide the name. But just doing some quick sort of internet research, looking at other cities, communities, the majority I was seeing online were known as commissions, although there were some also known as committees. And a local artist, actually earlier today, I was speaking with her about this, and she had I thought, a novel idea, and that would be to suggest calling it the Truckee Public Arts Council. It was sort of an alternative to commission, since there already is a commission. So just a thought, but I like the notion of commission or council versus committee. Committee strikes me as something that is more temporary in nature, could be disbanded after a certain period of time, whereas commission or a council has a little bit more, at least in my view, weight to it, seriousness to it, and I think this is a serious thing, and it's an important step, and it's an important statement for our community. So I think the proper name is important as well. So anyway, so those are some thoughts, but sounds like we're in general agreement that let's let the group decide once the group is formed, and agree with Anna and Jessica about applying some timelines and timeframes to this. So,
okay.
So then the next step is actually bringing the recommendation of the committee members back to us. Is that the next step?
Yeah. So we would go out and do a solicitation, kind of the way we've done it with other committees, and probably also at the same time put together the resolutions and bylaws, the sort of official creation documents that you'll need. So you can do that at the same time, presumably, as picking the individuals. Mm-hmm. So we'll go out and solicit people, probably solicit the Alliance and others to give us some help there and some thoughts about who they think might fit the role. And I was thinking about, Jessica, your visual arts question. It's very likely that some of those other roles could well be visual artists or have visual art, businesses as well, because if only one is technically called a visual artist, but you've got a public art expert, a youth art representative, an arts advocate, those, and even the technical expert could all have some visual art background.
If you think that's because that does tend to be the more common public art that we see is, sculpture or mural, that kind of thing.
So when would we want to see this next phase come back?
Look down at Judy here, but with the holidays, we may want to bump it. It'll be probably second meeting in January or 1st February would probably be about right. I want to give people enough time, and then the holidays are probably not a great time to sign up for another commission or a council.
Yeah, they might miss it in the newspaper.
Yeah, so
so
probably second meeting in January or 1st in February would be my suggestion.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Good. So, Jeff, you feel you have enough direction? And
absolutely. The one thing I will point out, it's not direction, but this will take funding. We've put $25,000 of just kind of seed money, and we've had quite a bit of staff time, but we haven't. There will be quite a bit of staff time moving forward because a commission or a commission always does take some staff time, and they'll be doing some substantial work, and presumably there will be some pressure to, put in more than $25,000. So just be prepared. This will be a budget conversation to bounce off all the other budget conversations.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think as we noted last in January with our retreat and our budget discussions, it's a start. It's a starting point, and I think it'll grow from here. So, good. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming out tonight and for your support. So appreciate that. All right. I think next we have item 7.2, which is consideration of an ordinance amending Title 15 of the Municipal Code for the purpose of adopting the updated California Building Standards Code. And Dan West is going to lead us through this. And Dan, before you do that, I just want to say kudos for the great job. We had a full room here, a couple of weeks ago, giving our professional building community, construction community an overview, and so you and your team did
great work there along with collaboration from CAT, so thank you for that. Thank you, David.
All right. So as you have in front of you, you have the actual ordinance and the amendment. We just need to vote on it tonight, I guess, to move forward. I haven't had any comments from anybody in the public other than what we got from Kat, approving everything. So basically, that's all there is to it, and we just need to decide, make the vote, and get it adopted. If you guys have any questions for me as far as what's going on, or anybody else for that matter?
We do have to hold a public hearing.
Huh?
It's a public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just a reminder for the public, this is the town of Truckee adopting the 2019 California Building Codes,
yes.
Which is mandatory across our state.
That's
all cities, communities need to do this, and this code will take effect January 1,
January
2020.
1, yes.
So, and then what, Dan, was last meeting or last month you were
here to give us a detailed overview.
Yes, the last meeting I was giving you a detailed overview of everything.
Okay, so when we go over this and approve this tonight, we will have done so understanding from our last meeting.
Correct.
The specifics. So, any clarifying questions from council?
I feel we deliberated this adequately last time, so I'm good.
All right. Same here. At this time, we'll open this item up for public comment. Seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment and bring this back to council for a motion.
Before we move, I just want to give a little shout out to Dan. Pat Davison from the Contractors Association of Truckee Tahoe sent a very nice email giving kudos to Dan and his team for how well they worked through this process with CAT and creating this smooth transition and resolving all the questions, and they just really speak highly of you, and I wanted to give you full credit for that and make sure that I am very proud of the work that you've done. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you, Dan. You Deb. Okay.
You want a motion?
Yep. We'll take a motion.
I move that we adopt ordinance 2019-09, amending Title 15 to update the California Building Standards Code and the town's local regulations.
I second.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The motion carries. We will be implementing a 2019 California Building Code, January 1.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, we are now ready for item 7.3, a staff report on the appeal of the Boulders Phase 4-C amendment. And Yumi Don is going to walk us through this item.
Good evening, council members. This is an appeal of the October 15, 2019 Planning Commission action on the Boulders Phase 4C. Since appeals are considered de novo, the town council is reviewing this item as if it is being heard for the very first time, independent of the commission's action. So I'll give you a quick background on the history of the project, and then we'll move forward into the project request, and then any questions from council, I'll be happy to take. So the Boulders is located along Deerfield Drive off of Highway 89 South, behind the Save Mart Shopping Center. Boulders Phase 4 is on the westernmost part of the Boulders, and then Phase 4C is even farther, is the westernmost part of that Phase 4. It abuts the Coldstream Specific Plan area. So this project has been around for quite a while. In 2000, it was originally submitted as an application, and in 2001, it was approved by our Planning Commission for a 3-phase, 180-unit condominium project on Deerfield Drive. That approval included the plan development, use permit, development permit, and then a vesting tentative map. And then in 2006, the appellants acquired 5 adjacent acres to phases 1 through 3, and the Planning Commission approved moving 12 units from Phase 3 to Phase 4, and then approved 31 additional residential units. So in total, there's 211 units approved within the Boulders today. In 2015, the appellants submitted an application to split Phase 4 into 3 additional phases. The Planning Commission approved that new tentative map. As you can see, this map has been skewed on its side, but Phase 4C is now Phase 4A, B, and C, or Phase 4, yeah. The Planning Commission also approved a removal of the 5 proposed affordable housing units within Phase 4, finding that the Boulders as a whole within Phases 1 through 4 in total has met its 15% inclusionary housing requirement. And then that Planning Commission also approved a payment of $100,000 to affordable housing and a fair share roundabout contribution for the Deerfield Drive Dolomite roundabout as part of that approval. Additionally, those fees, the $100,000 affordable housing fee and the fair share roundabout contribution, was broken up to be paid throughout the whole entirety of the project. So Phase 4A, each unit would pay 1/43 of that contribution at the close of escrow, and Planning Commission at that time approved that timeline because there was the appellants wanted to move forward quickly since those buildings were already built. But in general, Phases 4B and 4C were approved to be paid at temporary or final certificate of occupancy, which is a general timeline that the town uses, since that is a tool that we have to monitor. We can't monitor. Thus far, phases 4A and 4B have been constructed, subdivided, and sold. And then phase 4C, buildings 33, 34, and 35 have been constructed. And there are some outstanding items that need to be completed before we can move forward with finaling those. So the appellant's only request tonight, which was reviewed by the Planning Commission on October 15th, was to change the timing for the remaining housing fee and roundabout fee from temporary or final certificate of occupancy to close of escrow. Generally, payment schedules are triggered at building permit issuance or occupancy because those are milestones the town reviews and monitors. So as you can note, maybe you see that in contrast to your staff report, the numbers have changed slightly. The appellants have moved forward with they would like to final one of their buildings, so they have moved forward with the payment of one fee. So it's reduced slightly as opposed to what's in your staff report. So the requirement for a substantial public amenity for a planned development, in addition to a project of superior design, was adopted in 2012 into our development code. Previously, that public amenity requirement was not a requirement in our development code for a planned development. The 2015 approval was the first time that it was applied to the boulders, and the boulders made the justification for this substantial public amenity as shown on this slide. There's several things that the appellants have identified that they felt were public amenities. Staff notes that only 2 items highlighted in blue are the items that were actually something above and beyond what the requirements were of at that time. At the October 15th hearing, the Planning Commission approved the project amendment with an increase to the housing fee to $211,000 for the 15 remaining units to be constructed, which is approximately $14,000 per unit, and granted the appellant's request to pay both the roundabout fee and the affordable housing fee at close of escrow. It should be noted that the Planning Commission approved a development permit, plan development, and tentative map extension based on information from staff that was later found to be out of compliance with the Subdivision Map Act. So that's why the project description has changed slightly from the Planning Commission's original approval. The Planning Commission should have reviewed only a project amendment, as the other permits, the plan development, development permit, and tentative map are still in effect. So it is unknown how this updated information that we found out after the October meeting happened. We don't know how that would have affected the Planning Commission's action. So the main question for tonight, based on the updated information that was not provided to the Planning Commission at their meeting, is the previously approved amenity package adequate to make the findings for the amendment to the plan development. It's important to keep in mind that the 2015 project approvals are still in effect until and if the Town Council adopts a new approval that supersedes it. The only amendment they are requesting is to change the payment schedule for the housing and roundabout fee. So tonight, staff is recommending that the Town Council conduct a public hearing and adopt Resolution 2019-69, upholding the decision of the Planning Commission, denying the appeal, determining the project exempt from CEQA, and approving the project amendment, and deny the request for a refund. And this recommendation is based on the Planning Commission's previous action in October. However, as noted, it is unknown how the updated information that we found after October 15th, how that would have impacted the Planning Commission's decision. So an appeal of the Planning Commission's action is considered de novo, as stated before, which requires that the Town Council make its own findings in support of its actions independent of the Planning Commission's previous decision.
And I'd just like to point out that staff, as a matter of routine, always recommends upholding the Planning Commission decision simply because we don't want to second guess them. We don't think it's our place to tell the council the Planning Commission got it wrong. However, in this case, as Yumi noted, the Planning Commission's decision was premised on an understanding of the situation, understanding the nature of the application that turned out not to be quite right. So although we are kind of bound by tradition to say we recommend that you uphold the Planning Commission decision, you might want to take into consideration that the Planning Commission didn't have a completely accurate picture of what was before them.
So some alternatives that the council can move forward with. One is to grant the appeal and undo the Planning Commission action, which would leave in place the 2015 approval and the $100,000 affordable housing fee, plus the payment would be at temporary or final occupancy. The council can grant the appeal and approve the appellant's request, which would be the $100,000 affordable housing fee, but the payment would be upon close of escrow. or the council can grant the appeal but determine that an alternative public benefit is necessary. And then depending on which direction you decide to go as a council, you may decide to refund the appellant's appeal amount. So that's the end of my presentation. I can take any questions. The appellant team is here tonight if you would like to ask any. I don't know if they have a presentation prepared or not.
Okay, thank you, Yumi. Just real quick question before we open it up to questions for council. The very top, the 62,000, was that amended to 58,000?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure. All right. Any clarifying questions from council?
No. Lots of discussion.
Okay. Let's see. I have a question for, is a representative of the applicant here? Okay. I do have a question for the applicant. Clarifying question. Given the understanding now that the map, I'm sorry.
I'm Dave Gardner. I'm the developer.
Dave Gardner, okay. Given that the map, the plan development, the permit itself have not expired, they're still valid through December 26, 2020, would you still have
put yourself in front of the Planning Commission just to ask to have a change of the timing to close of escrow versus C of O for your fees?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so that was the main driver. So it wasn't because of a need to, an understanding that you needed to extend anything.
Yeah, it's just a financial thing. My banker won't give me the extra $100,000 that I need to make those fees at TCO. I wanted to take them out of the closings, which we've done in the past, and it was very successful. And I don't know why we changed back, but all of a sudden the decision was made to take it out of TCO. I was really confused about that because I was paying $60 to have them cash that check. So I don't know. Maybe that was enough money.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. That was my only question at the moment.
all right. If there are no other clarifying questions from council right now, we will open this up for public comment. So is there any public comment?
Hi, I'm Ann Souza. I grew up partially in Squaw Valley, so I feel like I kind of know Truckee. I also have been following this project. I attended the last planning meeting, and I'm a recent architect graduate, so I also have been studying planning. So it's been a really interesting experience to see how this process works in the real world, but also kind of shocking and concerning from what I've witnessed. Since, as we just went over, Mr. Gardner came here to change it so his fees would be taken out of escrow because he's already having trouble paying for them. And it doesn't seem logical or very supportive of the town to then turn to him and ask for more money instead of helping him out. Not very supportive of local developers. I feel like it would be more beneficial for the town to help support to finish this project since it is at its very end. It would be better, in my opinion, to have a completed project than just leave something. And also, as it was noted in the staff report, Mr. Gardner has met the 15%. And in addition, he is giving the extra, I think it was $100,000. And now the town is going back and asking for more. So I don't see how it's very fair to keep asking him for money when he's having a hard enough time paying for what is already being asked. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Ann.
Mayor, Council, my name is Kurt Rankins. I've been watching this project since inception. It was kind of a legacy of my business partner before he retired. So I've been watching it at arm's distance. And I just wanted to kind of highlight some of the history. Dave came up with this with his partner way back when, and before the town had any inclusionary housing. And they came forward and came up with the very first one, and did it voluntarily when it wasn't a requirement. And they overshot. They asked, at that point with Tony Lashbrook, they went for more than 15%. And the town kind of figured out along the way that somewhere along the way, it's too much to extract. And so they backed down to the 15. And there was also the down cycle that came along during that time period. You might recall that the state knew that the building industry and developers were being hit really hard. And they made a point of saying, hey, all these entitlements that builders have, you should extend them to ease the pain through the cycle. Well, Dave was caught with a project that already started, so it was kind of worse than just an entitlement. And he hung in there through that time period. And the program ended up being flawed and needing some work, and he worked with the town and adjustments and did everything in good faith with the town along the way. And coming out of the down cycle, he had the opportunity to perhaps recover some of his losses by expanding the project, since he had so much overhead already into the project. And that's when he came in and expanded into the next phases. And at that point, Dave didn't even feel that he owed another $125,000, I think as it worked out to. He felt that was an undue extraction at that time because he'd already met the 32 units. So if you look at the numbers today at full build out, he worked and had that 15% to the numbers today, even today. So plus he's paid on top of that. And something that didn't get said is that he was then also, an extraction went on for a portion of a roundabout. And I was at the hearing for that roundabout. I don't think Nexus was ever proved on that roundabout. The discussion was the Tyker aggregate project and Deerfield Drive, the traffic along there, and the hotel admittedly said they get a lot of truck drivers that come and stay in the hotel, and they need to turn their trucks around, and it's an issue. And there was a discussion, the roundabout would be good. And then they extracted the roundabout percentage from Dave. And I feel if you're going to get into public benefit portions, I think that his proportion that he's been paying into this roundabout, that now is questionable what's even needed, that I think he's paid into his public benefit. So I just also want to say that sometimes it's messy. We're making sausage here, and sometimes the staff and the planning commission, don't have all the data. I think this is one we can admit that we made a mistake, and we have an opportunity to make it right. Thanks.
Thank you, Kurt. Just a quick follow-up question, if I may, on the roundabout. There's a roundabout at Coldstream Canyon, the Tykert project, and then there was another roundabout that wasn't required by the town, but close to the boulders, from what I understood.
Correct. That's the one he was paying into.
Okay, the second one.
The one closer to the boulders.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other public comment?
Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment and bring this back to council for discussion. So I think in terms of discussion, at least my thought is to keep this focused, since the project is substantially complete. Keep it focused on the issue of the fees, the additional fees that were imposed at Planning Commission. And then I think the second question here is timing of payment of those fees, whether at close of escrow or at certificate of occupancy as determined by the 2015 Planning Commission. At least that's what I'm seeing as the primary issues. And then I guess the third one would be the determination of public benefit. So maybe those are the three issues, unless you guys see anything further that we need to touch on.
Well, and then the cost of the appeal.
And the cost of the appeal, right. So four things. The fees, the timing, cost of the appeal, and then the public benefit. So who would like to start? Why don't should we just take the fee as the first item? The fees? Okay.
Sure. So I feel like with a project that's been approved, it's almost like we have an agreement. Okay, you do this, we'll do that. Great, it's approved, go ahead. To change those requirements once it's already been completed, once it's been agreed upon, is really, I feel like it's just kind of pulling the rug out from under someone's feet. I don't feel like it would really be fair to suddenly have the fees be increased. So that's where I'm feeling with that one, is that I don't feel like we as the town would really be holding up our end of the deal if we were to be making changes.
Yeah, I think this is a challenging situation because the last thing I want to do is go against a planning commission decision. They work really hard for us, and I want to support them. But it's also very clear that they were making a different decision than what's before us tonight. And if we had the opportunity to look back on a project that had expired and was starting new, I think it would be very important to uphold our current standards. But that is not the case before us, as the Planning Commission thought it was before them. So I agree. I think this was an approved project. It still is an approved project. I don't think we should be imposing a change in a fee structure at this point. But then the next question of whether or not this, that what they're asking for to change the timing of it triggers anything else, I guess that's next on our discussion.
Right. I agree with you both. I think there was an agreement on fee at the Planning Commission in 2015, and that was unanimous viewpoint. Full disclosure, I was actually a planning commissioner in 2015. Do I remember this item in detail? No, but I did go back and read the notes, and it did prompt some memory coming back, and I do recall this discussion, and I think we felt collectively that what was imposed at that time was a fair compromise. I think the important point that we heard tonight, and I think it's been made before, is that this development is substantially complete. They met the 15% inclusionary housing requirement overall when you think about 211 units. And through a combination of in lieu fees and some actual built moderate housing units, I think the total number was 32 out of the 211. They met that threshold already. And I think that's an important point. And I too don't think it's fair to move the goal line, move the goalpost at this point in time. So I think we're in agreement on that. So then the question is of timing, and I think what was interesting, I'll just, before opening this up, just noted that Phase 4A, those fees were close of escrow, is that right? However, Phase 4B and C were at C of O, and I think we heard that was because the 4A was either under construction or much further along, and you had buyers at the time. I'm not sure what that reasoning was. I think anyway. So the question before us tonight is: do we stick with the decision of the 2015 Planning Commission, which was at close of escrow, or I think the more recent Planning Commission, they were okay with at close. At final occupancy was 2015. Mm-hmm. October 2019 was at close of escrow. So how do we feel about that?
I also should just disclose that I received some feedback from Jim Porter, who represented the applicant at some point, although we didn't engage in a discussion, but I did receive some of his opinions on this. I think there really is no difference for us whether it's at certificate of occupancy or at close of escrow. We're getting the same amount of money and the same fee on that money. So if it benefits the developer and alleviates some of that cash flow that I know can be a challenge, I don't see it as an impact to the town unless staff can provide any other reasoning that it would negatively impact us in some way.
I would say that the justification is our normal stance is to do something where we have ability to monitor and review. So with a building permit issuance or temporary certificate of occupancy, there's obviously a role that the town plays that would trigger our review and ensure that that payment is provided.
The escrow, it's kind of up to the market, whether or not it sells, first of all, and then second of all, us keeping an eye on the market and making sure that once a project is sold that we know.
And then we had a short deliberation about whether or not the certificate of occupancy could be withheld until just that final execution of funds.
Yeah, I think that Mr. Gardner would probably tell you that people will not be able to go into escrow without a C of O. That's pretty typical, that people can't get mortgage financing on a unit for which a C of O has not yet been issued.
Right, but then so it just shortens, what we had talked about was it shortens that time frame from getting a certificate of occupancy now and paying the fee now, and he doesn't know when the close of escrow would be, versus we know it's going to be a 60 or a 30-day escrow.
Well, yeah, Mr. Gardner could speak to this better. When I've done a little bit of private side development work in the past, my clients have always been really antsy about that. The idea of delaying the C of O for any reason has tended to make people nervous, but of course the applicant's here and can address that better.
Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Gardner?
Yeah, we would never delay the process, as our construction financing costs are about $1,000 a day right now, is what I'm experiencing, $33,000 a month.
And so your C of O helps stop that clock.
Well, you got to get your C of O before you can before you can have occupancy.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to do anything to slow the process down. I mean, we're already hindered enough by different things that are coming up, like landscape architecture. We got to have all that squared away. You know, I mean, there's a lot of little things that the town is doing right now to delay me from getting my final map approved so I can get my white paper so that I can close units, okay? I have people putting their furniture in garages right now because they've sold their homes and they have no place to live. So
I think we're a little bit off topic
there. I'm just explaining that, no, we're not going to slow anything down because it's very costly. So... And, you know, I mean, I'm going to have my attorney put a clause into the title company that says that fee, whatever it is, I think it's like $8,500, is going to be paid at close of escrow. So the title company is sending the check to the town. Mm-hmm. And then I'm paying the town like $40 to $60 to cash the check.
So it just appears that if you've got people ready to move into those, then there really isn't a delay other than the escrow period.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we don't have any delays right now. So it's really important that we have and can expedite closings. That's what's really important right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Jessica?
I don't really have a whole lot of heartburn either way on this one. The one kind of thing that I thought about is that it's really what we had just discussed with the fees, but in opposite. If you have an agreement, you're supposed to uphold your end of the deal, which would be to pay with the certificate of occupancy. But also it's a town versus an individual or a business. So, or not versus, but you know, it's one expectation with another. So I really, as long as we can be insured, you know, that we're going to be receiving upon close of escrow the payment, I would be okay with that.
Okay. So, you know, with payment at CVO, there's certainly more certainty for the town of Truckee in terms of the timing of that payment. Close of escrow is more tied to the marketplace sales, that sort of thing. So there's less certainty there. So I'm curious what the sales pace history has been in recent years. How long have things been sitting on the market, for example?
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, in 2008, it wasn't good, right?
No, but let's say
for 4 years, it was really difficult, right?
Right.
I mean, I escaped bankruptcy. The whole thing, I made it all work. I just worked my fingers to the bone. Now, we've got a pretty brisk sales market. Out of the 12 units that I have, we've got 9 of those in contract and we're ready to have move-ins, like before Christmas.
So how long from time of putting on market to getting into contract? I mean, on average, are you seeing?
Well, yeah, just it all comes down to completion, right? We're just finishing punch list right now. In the next week, we should be done with punch list and we can move people in.
But I mean, are units on the market for 3 months, 6 months before they sell? But a year, 2 years?
Yeah, during the whole pre-construction period, we have units on the market, right?
Okay.
But we can't deliver until we get a TCO.
Right, but you're going into contract during construction on some of these units? Okay.
Yeah, we've got 9 contracts with deposits up with First American right now.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah, there's a guarantee that the town is going to get their money.
Yep. Okay.
So,
yeah, I guess
where I'm at, I'd be comfortable with the proposal of close of escrow. At close of escrow, I think certainly I understand how that is beneficial, you know, to you as a developer. I think we're in a pretty healthy market right now. I would be concerned. You know, a little concerned about setting a precedent with this, because we typically do either collect fees as a town at issuance of building permit or grading permit, or at you know, when a project is done and getting a C of O. So that's pretty much the standard, and I think has been the standard for many years. So we're kind of making an exception in this case. But I think, at least in my view, the exception is driven by the fact that this development is sort of filling a void, of filling a certain segment of our, providing a certain segment, a much needed choice or offering for a segment of our population here that I don't think we have enough of. You know, we have a lot of high-end development, certainly around the perimeters and in other parts of Truckee, but this development, you know, seems to be kind of hitting a segment of the market that needs this kind of housing. I think for that reason, I'm a little, I guess, more inclined to go with the close of escrow proposal.
Can I? We had this agreement. You know, and we were very successful with it in the past. And I don't know why we had to change it.
So you had this agreement in the early days, the early going?
I can't remember which phase it was, but you know, for a couple of phases, and we produced the funds, paid our bills, and we were very successful. And then all of a sudden, it changes back to TCO, which is really tough for me because I get down to the end of the project and I'm trying to get my landscaping done and my finish up things, and I'm out of money.
I think we're in agreement up here. So you got it.
I do want to, though, pause and consider the precedent potential. and make sure that we
unless we can make a connection or a nexus between
a specific benefit for the community for this exchange of close of escrow. We need to just be cautious of that because there are good reasons to do this at certificate of occupancy.
Yeah, maybe, and just one thought might be to, say at close of escrow, but give a certain period of time after C of O, within 6 months, or close of escrow, or within 6 months, whichever. I'm not sure how to quite word that, but you know what I mean?
And then the challenge there is then what triggers it, right? How do we?
Well, C of O
don't really have
starts the clock.
Well, I think what the mayor is suggesting, if I could put words in your mouth, is something like upon the sooner of C of O or 90 days, or C of O or 120 days, so that if the close of escrow. If the close of escrow is taken a while, that we'll get paid in advance of that. But if the unit sells relatively quickly, that the close of escrow would be the triggering event for the town to get paid.
Right. I think that's the concept.
That could be done.
Yeah. So that gives some degree of certainty, but I think it still allows some time, and it just depends on the timing.
Particularly in the current market that we have. How many more units are we talking about being?
15.
15 more.
15 units.
To be built still. And so we don't really know what the market is going to be like in another year when those are ready for a certificate of occupancy. But that is something to consider.
So if we did something like that, my inclination would be, 6 months. So whatever number of days that is, 80 days.
Yeah, and would the 180 days be measured from the issuance of the C of O?
Yes.
So it's either 180 days after the C of O or close of escrow, whichever comes first.
Yep. That seemed like, that's sort of I think the concept still gives some adequate time for the market.
Does that become a tracking challenge for staff?
It's more of a challenge, but it isn't something insurmountable.
Well, we know when the C of O is issued, so we can keep track of that, and we can make a note somewhere to start that clock ticking and check back in if we haven't been paid within 180 days. Yeah. That's feasible.
Just again, as we see the market drive activity, to have to do this on multiple projects might become an detriment, and we would not want to go there.
It might be appropriate to ask the applicant how he feels about it.
Mr. Gardner, how do you feel about that?
I feel very confident that I can accomplish this. As the next 15 units, we've already got 9 of those pre-sold with deposits at First American. So
all right.
That takes a lot of the speculation out of it.
Right.
And I think you guys are in good shape.
Okay. So you're saying you're
comfortable if we went in that direction with the 6 months?
Oh yeah, because at 6 months, I'm fire selling these things and they're going to sell.
All right.
The bank's got a release price, and that's what I'm going to be selling them for after 6 months.
Okay.
All
right. So that's sort of a very unique compromise proposal for your situation, but I think it gives you. Sounds like it gives you what works, and maybe gives a little more certainty to the town as well.
Okay, I really appreciate that.
Okay, good.
All right, let's save the cost of the appeal for last and go to the issue of public benefit. Was there a slide? Yeah. Okay. So the question here is the adequacy of what has been, offered up, and this, being the additional $100,000 payment above and beyond having met already the inclusionary housing, the current inclusionary housing requirement of 15%. So there's additional funding there. A fair share contribution to the construction of a roundabout. And was there anything else? The trail, I understand the 8-foot wide trail was a requirement. Yeah, so I think those were the primary additional items. Any thoughts on that?
So would we be considering further public benefit in exchange for the ability to pay the fees at escrow? Is that where this is?
The question is whether the public benefits that have already been provided suffice to justify the delay in payment. Our code doesn't have any particular standard. There's not really a good way to quantify that. So the question before you at this point is just have the things that the applicant has already agreed to do, $100,000, dedication of roundabout, the roundabout money. Does that justify not only the 2015 land use approvals, but this additional thing that he's seeking, which is delayed payment? That's it.
Which we've already agreed to, basically.
Well, it essentially, if you've agreed to it, then you might have sort of implicitly found that there's enough of a public amenity here.
Yes, exactly.
So, but there's only 15 more units that we're accepting the delay in payment for. So I think that to ask for some sort of substantial, hey, put up some public art is not, I don't really see the sense in that. That's, if we were at the very beginning or if it was kind of a bigger ask, I don't feel like it's a really impactful ask.
Right.
Unless the applicant is dying to create some public art. Since we just talked about public art.
What I've provided is 2 very large granite rocks that are going to go in the middle of the roundabout, and they're already placed.
Those are art. That's nature's art.
Those are the boulders, right? Okay. All right. I'm good with, again, just sort of stepping back. This is a unique development, and it's high density, it's close to goods and services, it's sort of filling a void that needs to be filled in our community and gives a lot of options. So I think there's a lot of benefit in that already. These other things are above and beyond. So I'm very, very comfortable with this, and don't think we need to extract anything further. You've been through it, and you're almost there to the goal line, right? So I did have a question. I was curious. I know a number of people Truckee locals who live there. Do you have a sense of the percentage of Truckee local residents versus purchasing the Boulder units as second homes?
It's about 35% of all divorcees in Truckee live at the Boulders, including me.
I know a couple actually. So the bigger beyond the divorcee factor, you have a sense is it 50% full time?
It's about
50-50. Okay. All right. Great.
When we started out, it was about 25.
Okay. So it was 25 in the beginning. It's now around 50% full-time residents. Okay.
Mostly divorcees. Okay. Good to know.
All right. So I think we're good there with the plan development, public amenities. Last question is the cost of the appeal. And the cost of the appeal was what, $985? Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. How do you feel about that?
I think, like Kurt said when he spoke, that we kind of need to take this as it was a mistake. The commission didn't have all of the information available. That's not Dave's fault.
I agree. I see it the same way. We do have significant staff time vested in this, but it is, I would like to think that the Planning Commission would have come to the same conclusion given the same information. So
I agree. I think we should reimburse the fee. So, based on all those reasons.
Excuse me. What about the attorney fees that have incurred? Would it be outrageous for you to reimburse me for that as well? Because they're fairly substantial.
Any thoughts on that? My first inclination is no. I think we don't control your attorney, how they spend their time, and I know you can make the argument, well, you hired them because of things the town may or may not have done over the course of time. But I think that's kind of opening a different door, and I'm not sure I would be comfortable going there. I have no idea what your attorney fees are.
I think that is a very dangerous precedent to
Thank you. I was going to suggest that the precedent nature of that we would want to be concerned about. We have no control of how much
or what they did or why they did it.
What if Andy said it was a fair fee, an amount for the appeal?
Well,
I couldn't recommend it, and Tim Taylor doesn't work cheap. I mean, he's probably $500 an hour, and it's a very dangerous precedent for the town to set.
We granted the appeal, and we're giving your refund back, and I think that's a pretty good situation, a pretty good place to end, at least from our perspective. A good outcome, and we appreciate your hard work and all that you've provided to the community. So that's my take.
agreed.
Okay, is there anything else that we need to go over, or
CEQA findings.
what's that?
The CEQA findings.
Yumi, there's a pretty detailed screenshot there.
With some anticipation that there are alternatives, we did create a new resolution that would effectively do as you requested today, or directed, and then we've also amended it to include the language you provided regarding the timeline after certificate of occupancy is issued. So
Okay.
Amazing.
Wow, in real time. Okay. So these amendments are in the conditions of approval?
that's correct.
Okay. Is there anything else that we need to touch on?
No.
CEQA is already done, right?
Essentially with this, you are making a finding that it is categorically exempt per section, per general rule exemption.
Okay. All right. Very good. So we're going to need a motion then? Okay, so I'm looking at the recommendation. It looks like the recommendation in the staff report would need to be amended based on our action here. Okay, we'll give you a few minutes. We'll take a commercial break. Be right back. All right. Okay, so we have a recommendation, a resolution 2019-69. Maybe we can just quickly read through this. Oh.
Almost there. I know there's going to be a mass exodus, so everybody please drive slowly and safely. It's crazy out there.
Okay.
We can deal with the format issue. Okay.
Okay, so we have one bullet point that's below the line. Okay, so So let's read through this quickly. Okay. All right.
Okay, so do we need to read the whole thing for the motion?
No, not the whole thing. I think you've described it, and you can probably just describe it in the motion. So you can move to adopt resolution number whatever that is, which does these things, and then you can sort of list the things that it does. It grants the appeal, and it authorizes the applicant to pay the fees upon the sooner of close of escrow 180 days from the issuance of a C of O for each unit. And then we'll have the appropriate resolution, and that's what you're voting on.
We got the box fixed. Very nice. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So
I move that we grant the appeal and approve the appellant's request for the lower affordable housing fees. Adopt Resolution 2019-69, which essentially allows us to collect fees 180 days after the issuance of the certificate of occupancy or the close of escrow, whichever sooner. CEQA is categorically exempt, and we are granting the appellant's request for a refund.
You have a second?
Second.
All right. Why don't we do a voice vote on this one? Just to change it up a little bit.
All in favor?
No, I mean individual.
Councilmember Klövstad?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Councilmember Klövstad?
Aye.
Mayor Tillman?
Aye.
Councilmember Abrams?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Cheers. Okay. With that, I think we are ready for council reports. Is that right? Yeah. Yes, it is. We'll start with Councilmember Klövstad.
Okay, so we had another back-to-back GPAC and GPAC Climate Subcommittee meeting last week. So at GPAC, you were there, Mayor, and we were looking at solutions presented to date and did some adjusting and confirming of the intent of the solutions. It was, I thought, a really good process. In the Climate Subcommittee, we reviewed the land use solutions from the previous month and then dug deep into energy usage, potential greenhouse gas emission reductions, which was a lively but slightly rushed discussion. We had a lot of good ideas and a lot of people in attendance. We had a lot of extra public there this time as well, which was great. I attended a LAFCO meeting last week as well, where the Nevada Irrigation District presented their concept of I guess it would be creating a CCA to provide electricity roughly to the same geographic area that they currently provide water. Taking that, buying that out from PG&E. And there's a lot of really interesting co-benefits that they were talking about there. So I thought that was very interesting for the eastern part of our community. I'm sorry, the western part of our community. And then I attended one of my favorite local events, the Sarepta Shop, which I really love because it brings in local artisans and craftsmen and local community members and benefits a local organization. So it's just a nice win-win-win. So that was that.
Jessica.
I attended a concert. I wasn't acting as a town representative. I was chaperoning a school field trip for my children, but it was put on by Arts for the Schools. It was the first Arts for the Schools event that I had attended, and I was really, really impressed with the caliber of musicians that they brought right into downtown Truckee to perform for these, kindergartners and first graders up through preschool through 8th grade. So it was a really fun event to attend.
Great. So for me, November 13, I met with a representative of Senator Kamala Harris's office. Her field representative, her name is Sam Maciel, and she grew up in Truckee High graduate. So she just wanted to introduce herself and let her know that Senator Harris, her office is always open to help us when we have grant applications for federal grants, those kinds of things. So I think a good contact. I'll circulate her contact information to Judy so she can share that with staff and our council. Attended a reception that same day for the new Truckee librarian at Cottonwood, which was a very nice event put on by the Friends of the Truckee Library. The 14th, attended a ribbon cutting, actually cut the ribbon with a gigantic pair of scissors from the Truckee Chamber. Actually doesn't really cut the ribbon, but almost cuts the ribbon. And that was for a new retail outlet known as Coalition Snow. They make some really cool snowboards, and they're over by Blue Coyote. Attended the California Building Code Change seminar put on here in this room, packed audience by Dan West and his team, really, really informative. The chief building official from Nevada County gave the overview, did a great job. Cadillac Ball, November 16, Truckee Rotary Club, big annual fundraiser, a lot of fun. And then on the 19th, I met with the head of the American Legion Post for Truckee, Matt Hillock, and we toured the Vets Hall up on the hill to talk about his vision, thoughts about renovating Vets Hall. Terrific project. Ann Floor Dwyer is an architect working with him, and they've got a great vision. I think we're going to be hearing more and more about this, and I think a worthy thing to think about renovating Vets Hall, which is 80 years old this year. GPAC with Anna on the 21st. November 22nd, I drove down to Nevada City and participated in the Nevada County leadership training that they put on every year. They had a mayor's forum, so I was up there with the mayors of Grass Valley and Nevada City, and we spent an hour talking about what it was like to be the mayor. And, helped, they had a room full of participants taking this leadership class. I think we do a similar thing here in Truckee every year. So great experience that was. And then on the 22nd, that same evening, the Christmas tree lighting downtown, Truckee Rotary. Yes, I saw you there. And a wonderful event, local event, a lot of school kids out there with their parents. And then this past Sunday, went to an open house at Coburn Crossing. Got to tour the 3 different unit types, talked to the manager, and what was interesting is he was saying they're about 50% leased up now, which is really encouraging. And they're finding that there is a lot more demand for the larger units, the 3-bedroom units, than they have. They only have a handful of 3-bedroom units, and they wish now that they had more. So I think some good lessons to be learned there for other future developments in town that are thinking about multifamily housing. So with that, we will adjourn until our next meeting, December 10. And I think that's the meeting wherein we select a new mayor and vice mayor for the coming year. And the annual financial report? Excellent. Okay, so looking forward to that. December 10, 6 p.m. In the meantime, everyone have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And thanks again for coming tonight and watching.